Heinz, oh, Heinz, yeah, sure, all right.
I'm confused.
Died in the plane. Yes, yes.
Oh, I'm still here.
Yep.
Got scrambled a little.
Yeah.
He put, Tara's not here.
Tara's not coming.
Oh, boo-hoo.
So are we gonna waste time on the ordinance then?
Are we being recorded yet, Jimmy?
We will be in a minute.
Okay.
At the start of that.
Start your engines.
Oh, sorry.
Oh,
Welcome back. Good evening.
So nice to see you.
so who's sitting
Richard, our
here?
condolences.
Oh, Alex.
Oh, thank you so much.
Oh, because they should have announced something that we did.
Don't you think it'd make more sense if I sat here and Alex sat on the end, Jackie? Wouldn't that make more sense, have Alex on the end? Three of us together, no?
Well, just in case there's a question or whatever. It's the way it used to be.
Visually, it's like you said, bad optics. Me over here and you over there, but if you want it that way, that's your decision.
And go for it.
Yes.
Oh, hi. I'm good, how are you?
Is there a Zoom link, Jimmy? 'Cause,
Yeah, it was sent out. It just started.
Just keep scrolling.
I think it's too personal. Or are we supposed to be one back?
I think one back.
One back? It's supposed to be every other row?
It's where the blue X's are.
That's,
Sit on-
yeah, we messed up. We're looking for the blue.
It's like musical chairs, you know, when the music stops.
Yeah, yeah, that was.
Honestly, I think you and I should be switch seats, but she's already set up. Oh, Pat, you're making the presentation on the Zoom?
Yes, sir.
Oh.
Jimmy, you're gonna have to let Martha Callahan and John Rushke in as presenter.
In accordance with Section 5 of the Open Public Meeting Act, be advised that a notice of this meeting was made by posting on the bulletin board in Town Hall and forwarding to the officially designated newspapers that this meeting would take place at Town Hall at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, October 20th. Please stand to salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May I have a roll call, please?
Ms. Burstein,
Here.
Ms. Prupus, Ms. Paul Eglo,
Here.
Mr. Wasserman,
Here.
Mayor Lieberberg.
Here.
Thank you.
May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion?
May I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? I'll begin with the reports. First, I want to acknowledge that this is Red Ribbon Week. Whereas alcohol and drug abuse affects millions of families in our nation, whereas it is imperative that visible, unified prevention, education efforts by community members be launched to eliminate the demands for drugs and the access to drugs and alcohol. Whereas the Governor's Council on Alcohol and Drug Abuse and the Millburn Municipal Alliance Committee are sponsoring the 2020 Red Ribbon Campaign, offering citizens the opportunity to demonstrate their commitment to a drug-free lifestyle, meaning no illegal drugs, no illegal use of legal drugs, and whereas the National Red Ribbon Campaign will be celebrated in every community in America during Red Ribbon Week, October 23rd through the 31st. Whereas the Township of Millburn commits its resources to ensure the success of the Red Ribbon Campaign and encourages businesses, government, parents, law enforcement, media, medical, religious institutions, schools, senior citizen service organizations, and youth to demonstrate their commitment to drug-free, healthy lifestyles by wearing and displaying red ribbons during this week-long campaign. Now therefore be it resolved that the Township of Millburn does hereby support October 23rd to 31st, Red Ribbon Week, and encourages the citizens to participate in alcohol and drug prevention education activities, making a visible statement that we are strongly committed to promoting a drug-free community.
Boom.
Good timing.
That means it's a serious statement.
You all right?
Going to continue with the committee reports. We currently have 191 cases of COVID-19 in the township. Essex County is reporting 22,606. 83% have recovered. These are cumulative cases, and those residents that have recovered are still counted as part of the total. As you all know, Governor Murphy has mandated that masks be worn at all times when social distancing is not possible. Essex County continues to offer free testing for residents multiple times per week. Please register at essexcovid.org. We've extended outdoor dining on Main Street and will continue to review on a weekly basis. We have numerous restaurants enjoying creative outdoor dining throughout the township, including a parking lot on Essex and Main, a parklet on Main Street below Millburn Ave, and other private lots. Please be sure to participate and support our local businesses. Remember to wear your mask in accordance to Executive Order 163. The November 3rd general election is primarily a vote by mail as per the governor's orders. Essex County has begun sending out all the vote by mail ballots to every registered voter. Please confirm your mailbox. Once your ballot is complete, you'll have 4 options to return it. The drop box at Essex County, mail the ballot by the U.S. Postal Service, hand deliver to the Board of Elections in Newark, or hand deliver your vote by mail ballot to a board worker at the polling location on November 3rd from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. Please remember, do not detach the certification flap. Fall curbside leaf collection begins on October 19th. Collection is scheduled for curbside pickup 3 times per zone between the month of October and December. You can check your schedule on the website twp.millburn.nj.us, DPW pamphlet. The farmers market will operate 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Tuesdays through the end of October. Please be sure to visit. Community Service Award Committee met on Zoom and discussed the inclusion of an award for younger people as well as adults. This is to recognize the volunteer activities of young heroes who have enhanced the quality of life for Millburn residents. This expansion has been proposed by a young woman Life Scout in the St. Rose of Lima Troop 19, and the project includes a whole program for engagement, participation, website design, and award criteria for selection by the committee. October 13th, Committeewoman Eglo, Business Administrator Alec McDonald, and myself attended a Zoom hosted by JCP&L. That was a joint between Essex County OEM and JCP&L to discuss Hurricane Isaias and the aftermath. During that storm, almost 800,000 of JCP&L's 1.1 million clients were out of service, and it was the second worst storm in their history, only second to Hurricane Sandy, and 4 days shorter than Irene. They explained that the problem delays that occurred in Millburn Short Hills were a result of quarantine circuits, meaning that the numerous lines required extra safety protocols because they were live wires. They assured us that going forward, we will have better communication and more consistent information with with our neighboring municipalities, getting more accurate updates and response times. As soon as they finish sharing their data with other communities, a Zoom presentation will be available to all residents. Halloween. Millburn will be following the New Jersey Department of Health guidelines that are posted on our website. These include some of the following. Outdoor activities are preferred as opposed to any indoor parties or events. Those planning celebrations or participation on Halloween should keep in mind all the public health recommendations of social distancing and physical distancing. Wear masks that cover both your nose and mouth, and hand hygiene. Outdoor door-to-door trick-or-treating, those who plan to do so should limit their groups to current household members, consider staying local, and limit the number of houses on the route. Social distancing should be practiced between all of those who are not in the same household. For those putting out treats, arrange individually packaged candy so they can grab and go rather than a shared bowl. Consider coordinating with neighbors to develop a system, signs or some kind of lighting on porches that will distinguish houses that are participating. Candy should be commercially packaged and non-perishable. Consider other treats to avoid sharing of food. Please consult our website, exercise good judgment, and follow all the protocols. The Bid Sid group met on Thursday, October 15th at 7 p.m. and discussed a variety of initiatives for a fall program. To begin, there will be a Halloween trick or treat on Friday, October 30th from 3 to 6 p.m. on Main Street. There'll be a photo booth opportunity station with foliage. Merchant participation in trick-or-treat activities and specialty goodie bags with candy and merchant discounts will be available for distribution on a first-come, first-served basis. Additionally, at that meeting, we had a preliminary review of our bylaws, committee assignments, short-term planning, including a directory of businesses, social media initiatives, business engagement, logo design. We hired a part-time marketing media consultant, Marla Itzkin, who previously had a long tenure with the Westfield Area YMCA as the Director of Communications and Marketing, to help us with our fall-winter programs as we continue to search for an executive director. She had a long industry history with the Y and extensive experience in social media, print advertising, and special projects. Thank you. That concludes my reports, Mr. Wasserman.
Yes, thank you so much, Mayor. This morning, I'll keep my remarks short. Our downtown visioning kickoff happened this morning at 9 o'clock. Committeewoman Eglo and I were, I guess, co-chairing this for this morning. It was a very productive meeting. It's a very exciting process. Eastman Perkins brought their team. We had our steering committee. We have a wonderful group of volunteers. There's a lot of excitement, about getting this process started. It's going to be an approximately 6-month process, including analysis and the team walked the township, and there was also a lot of discussion of having our teenagers also involved in the process through high school and middle school, and I think that was an exciting part of it also. So I just wanted to mention that, and I also want to mention that I want to encourage my colleagues to consider keeping Main Street closed, through the balance of the year. I think that it's going well. I don't see a downside. I know the schools are not fully back, and I really see that our local merchants are benefiting. The other day, I was walking around during the weekend, and I was amazed at how many neighbors from out of town were in attendance. I just think it's a positive thing to do. If we make a decision sooner rather than later, at least our restaurants and merchants could do some planning for the next several weeks. And I think it makes a lot of sense. I've also been in touch with first aid, and I don't think there's been any incidences. I don't think there's a downside, and I'm comfortable that there's not a downside. There's just an upside to having this available.
Thank you. Ms. Burstein, do you have any committee reports, please?
I do, but can I go last only because I have to move.
I'm sorry?
I have to move my location, so I'm just going to go to another room, and if Diane can do hers first, that would be
Sure.
great.
Hi, good evening. I just want to piggyback on what Jackie said about the JCP&L. The extent of the damage was, I think, beyond what anybody realized. I mean, you heard how incredibly hard and fast they got Millburn back online. I know it was frustrating for those who didn't have power, but I just want to commend JCP&L and Carol Bianchi, who is our rep, to a really strong recovery. I did go to the SID meeting on Thursday night. Something that I wanted to bring up. I did reach out to the chamber, and we're having the park winter walk, and I just think it might be something the SID might want to consider, is partnering with the chamber and possibly lighting up Upper Millburn Avenue and downtown instead of the park, because I have heard a few people remark that it's a great day, but we march in the park, but it doesn't necessarily transform to business in town. So maybe we could partner, if the chamber would be willing to talk about that with the SID, using those decorations throughout the avenue. Might be a nice change. The other thing is the steering committee. Committeewoman Prupus asked me to take her place. She did discuss that with you, Jackie.
No, it was not discussed,
Oh.
and we will not be discussing it this evening.
Okay, well, it was a good meeting. There's a broad base of knowledge from Perkins Eastman, and I guess a conversation with Tara will have to take another. Okay, thank you, Jackie. Oh, one more thing, excuse me. I see that on the agenda, you've moved public comment. I don't know if people are aware of that.
Well, we'll discuss that shortly. Thank you.
Okay. So I attended 2 meetings within the past week. The Rec Commission, the Giro Park basketball court is completed and lit. They're discussing fundraising for a scoreboard at the library field. For Taylor Park, they're waiting to see if they need a permit to fix the bridges. There should be signs around town, Mask Up Millburn, reminding people to wear masks in parks and playgrounds, and for parents and spectators at sporting events. 2 pickleball courts have been striped, one at Taylor Park and one at Giro Park, and you can make reservations for those courts. Fall programs are going strong. There's close to 1,500 kids in those programs, and the winter programs are still being worked on. I also attended a meeting at the library Board of Trustees. November 2nd at 2 p.m., there will be a fireside book chat where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. There'll be a Zoom link sent out after sign up. And the library has a new mascot, Hootie the Owl. There was a contest, and the mascot winner is Marie Rella, a 13-year-old. And there were also winners in 3 other categories. Youth category, Henry Yang, Who Loves Books. the Studious Squirrel in the teen category, and Bindo, I'm not really sure how to pronounce it, in the adult category. On December 8th, there'll be museum night. Nick Dawes on Selma, can't read my handwriting, Gundy Club in New York City. It's an arts club, and he will be discussing arts clubs from that club. And those are my reports.
Thank you. Mr. Falcon, nice to see you.
Nice to be seen, to be here. The next mediation session of the declaratory judgment.
Oh, wait, Kit. I think-
Kit needs to speak
Yeah.
up.
Just speak into your microphone.
Yeah. Maybe bring it forward to you.
The light is not going on.
Maybe you want to give me this.
As I was saying, the next mediation session of the declaratory judgment affordable housing case will take place, I believe, in the first week of November. I think I remember correctly, the 6th, and thereafter we'll be reporting as to what will be occurring next. At the last meeting, Committeewoman Iglo posed a good question, you may recall, in connection with the transfer of the $19,000 to the District Management Corporation, as to what would be the consequences with respect to those funds in the event that in the future the SID ordinance was disallowed. I've concluded that since the transfer of funds is being made while the ordinance continues to remain in effect, also pursuant to an approved municipal budget line item, and in accordance with the language in the ordinance authorizing the provision of funds to promote economic stimulus in the business district, that providing the funds is valid and lawful. But more to your point, if the ordinance were to be found invalid, if there was any balance at that point that had not been expended, then that would not be able to be spent. That would have to be sent back. But otherwise, the funds currently being forwarded would be validly spent if they're, spent for legitimate purposes pursuant to the SID. That's my report.
Mr. McDonald?
Well, there's a few presentations for the committee tonight. However, just one brief update is that if the committee may recall, a while back we had engaged in a firm to do an analysis of our streets and roadways, as well as other assets, curbing, sidewalks, and signage. We're getting some of that analysis back, which is great. It will be a fantastic tool for our engineering department and our capital budgeting going forward to make data-driven decisions on where paving and other monies are sort of allocated to the greatest need. So we'll be happy to share that once we've gotten all of that data and sort of sifted through it and can put it in a presentation for the committee. But it's going to be a great tool for us.
Thank you.
I have a question on Zoom. Can people see them on the Zoom or just on YouTube?
Yes.
Do you know, because they can only hear, they can't see who else is on the screen. I'm just curious to know how that works on the Zoom.
Well, I have some work experience on that. I can take.
Mr. Falk, thank you.
You can't, a lot of people black themselves out. All
Yeah,
the
that's right.
chairs are there.
Okay.
And then people who don't choose to do that, do that.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Thank you.
want to remind everyone that this is a business meeting.
You have presentations, Mayor.
Yes, I was just going to reiterate this.
Sure.
Again, this is a business meeting, and everyone should comport themselves appropriately, whether or not they attend in person or remotely. Going forward, yelling out from the crowd or showing disrespect for our neighbors or committee members will not be tolerated. If a member of the public disrupts the meeting, I will advise you with a warning that you are disrupting the meeting, and if it continues, you will be instructed that you are disrupting the meeting and preventing the business from proceeding and will either be muted or asked to leave the building. Public comments will be strictly limited to 3 minutes, and when 30 seconds are remaining, Mr. Homsey will state 30 seconds remaining, so that may conclude your public comment. Each individual will be given 1 opportunity to make their public comment. Now we will be proceeding with the Environmental Commission update and ban on single-use plastics. I will turn this over to our Environmental Commission Chair, Priya Patel.
Good evening, Mayor. At the last meeting, the Township Committee had requested that we provide some information, specifically in the form of feedback from the retailers that I had reported on last week as being in compliance but not truly fulfilling the spirit of the ordinance, which is to basically stop using the plastic bags. So since then, I just want to report out on some of the feedback that I've gotten. So number one, from Trader Joe's, which just to refresh your memory, what they were doing was that they were not allowing folks to bring in reusable bags, and they were also providing plastic bags. And when I spoke with the store captain, store manager, she said that essentially they were doing that because there's been a paper bag shortage and that they will be discontinuing the plastic bags. And so they will be in compliance in the short version. CVS, I talked to the store manager. So currently CVS is providing plastic bags, but those bags are made out of 80% post-consumer recycled material. After speaking to them, they said that this is what they've been told by their corporate office, that those bags are in fact reusable, they're not plastic, and they have no real intention of changing their practice as of now. ShopRite, I spoke with Amanda Fisher, who is the marketing manager, who Committeewoman Eglo and I and other members from the Environmental Commission were working with to pass the ordinance, and she reported that they're basically waiting for the state law to pass. And this is kind of what they had told us last year. Because they have so many locations throughout the state, they're really looking for some sort of uniformity. And to that end, they don't expect to be changing their practices anytime soon. They're hoping that if the state law passes, then they'll have to, comply by 2022. And then finally, with Walgreens, Walgreens is not providing a plastic bag currently, but they are providing paper bags, but they were not charging a fee for them. So after speaking to them, I think they just didn't really read the ordinance. So I spoke to the regional manager, and they are expecting to be compliant shortly. I think that's pretty much it. I did provide the redlined version per Committeewoman Burstein's request. That shows you the changes that we are proposing. And in sum, the changes really come down to 2 things. One is the definition of the reusable bag, and then the second thing is the fee. Whereas currently we have a fee of 10 cents, we're proposing that it be bumped up to 25 cents, right, to create even more of a disincentive for folks to be using these bags. The reusable bag, just briefly, would have stitched handles for reinforcement. They would be at least 10 mils thick, which is, to give you a sense of that, it's about 10 sheets of paper stacked up. So that's about how thick 10 mils is. And they'd be manufactured for multiple reuse, and they would be washable. And this language pretty much reflects the language that's in this proposed state bill. So with that, I know that we were advised at the last meeting that, if we if this amendment were to take effect, we'd have to get that through by the end of this year. So I wanted to see if that were something that was within the realm of possibility.
Ms. Eglo, would you like to?
I reread the definition on the red line. I think it's a very clear definition. I have no objectives, no objections. The objective is clear, but no objections.
Ms. Burstein, do you have anything you'd like to add about this?
Nope, thank you.
Okay.
Yep, no, I'm good.
I have nothing else to add as well.
So what's the next steps?
Today wants to proceed, and the commission has done all the work as far as drafting.
Yep.
You can introduce this at your November 10th meeting and have a second reading in December to accomplish it at the end of the year.
Right.
Okay. So I would encourage the Environmental Commission to proceed. Did you want to add something, Mr. Hilsenrath?
No.
Okay. And prepared for a first read on November 10th? Yes?
Yeah, we'll take care of that. Yeah.
And we should also make sure that our retailers, make sure everybody's invited. You know, I mean, I think it's a very good, I think it's a good idea to what we're doing, but let's make sure everybody's invited, so, you know, so everybody is heard.
Thank you, Ed and Priya, and your whole committee, and Tara, who's not here tonight. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. You know, our volunteers are the best. I just wanted to, you know, I don't think people are thanked enough. And I think when you go to, as a committee person, when you go to all these meetings, I'm always astonished at how much time people put in for our township. So, but thank you very much. That's really appreciated.
Okay. The next will be a presentation of downtown flooding by Mott McDonald.
Mayor, if you don't mind, I'll
Yes,
just,
I'm
I'll just.
sorry,
inter-
Mr. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just introduce this a bit. So a while back, the Township Committee had authorized a study of the downtown area flooding in relation to essentially between Taylor Park and the train trestle by the library cowpath. We engaged Mott McDonald and specifically John Rushke, who's with us tonight, as well as Martha Callahan, who is the township engineer, which will be presenting the findings from that study. And then there will be, I think, an additional sort of request in regards to this, which Martha and I will make at the end of this brief presentation. John, all you.
Thank you, Alex. Good evening, Mayor and committee members. As Alex indicated, my name is John Rushke. I'm a professional engineer with Mott McDonald, and I was the project manager for the hydraulic analysis that was done in the downtown area. The analysis basically started with getting a copy of the Army Corps analysis that was done on the west branch of the Royal River. That study, it extends a very extensive length of the river, but we truncated it just to focus in the area of Millburn. So we are using the best available information that we have today. Just wanted to note that back in 2008, Mott McDonald actually looked at the downtown area, and again, looking at the footer building. And at that time, the analysis was done based on a model developed by FEMA. And that model did have some limitations regarding the amount of data that was used to generate that model. So if you go back and look at our current report that's based on the more sophisticated model developed by the Army Corps versus the older model that was done by the FEMA, you will see differences in conclusions and impacts of looking at the flood mitigation efforts. But we did base it on the best information that's available today to come up with our conclusions. So the Army Corps model is an extensive model. It gives good data. It gives a good overview of what we can see when we look at improvements within the downtown and looking at the impacts of flow and elevation. There is another component of the HEC-ROS model that we did not use. It's actually a 2D analysis that looks at, it's a more three-dimensional, they call it 2D basically because it's looking at a planimetric view, but with the 2D model, you can actually look at flood elevations through a specific cross-section. So for example, if we wanted to know what the flood elevation is on Main Street versus the main channel, we could calculate that differences, but the model that the Army Corps did, it basically averages the changes. So the model that we use is good for a analysis of looking at overall impacts, but if you really wanted to go into micro analyze the downtown, the 2D analysis would be a way to go. But for ultimately for what we were tasked to do, the Army Corps is more than sufficient to conclude with some results of what we looked at. Through the model, we looked at various storm events. We looked at a 10, 25, 50, and 100-year storm event. The storm event is basically a storm that would occur statistically within that period. So, a 10-year storm statistically will happen once in 10 years. Likewise, a 100-year storm happens once every 100 years. We did focus just in the downtown area, and the analysis did look at primarily the Futter building and looking at alternatives of if we remove the Futter building, what other improvements could be done to further improve the flooding in the downtown area. So let me share my screen if I could. So this is a report that's attached to the agenda. It's the report that we issued in March, and I just started to go through the introduction, but I just wanted to highlight the alternatives. These are alternatives that we evaluated with our analysis. Our first option that we looked at was just removing the Futter building, no other improvements within the downtown area. The second option was to look at removing the Futter building and then also enlarging the channel between the Futter building and the Millburn Avenue Bridge, because right in that location, the channel does narrow, and we wanted to just have that continuous water course between Essex Street and Millburn Avenue and see what the improvements are with that. The third option is we looked at same as option 1 and 2, basically removing the Futter building and enlarging the channel. But then we also looked at enlarging or putting flood walls in between the Essex Street Bridge and the railroad, basically forcing the water into the area and try to eliminate the flooding that occurs. Basically the flow divides around the Essex Street Bridge and it goes to Main Street, which we're trying to focus more of the water going just into the main channel and try to eliminate some of that. And then the last option we looked at is all those three options, plus enlarging the Millburn Avenue Bridge. Within the downtown area, there are primarily 3 structures that really are control structures that restrict the flow within the downtown area. It's a Essex Street Bridge, it's the Futter building, and then the Millburn Avenue Bridge. Those 3 structures have a significant impact on flood elevations within the downtown area. So this is just a photo of the general area, but this is where I was saying regarding we installed basically flood walls in this area from Essex and the railroad, just forcing the flow into the main channel and looking at the Futter building and also Millburn Avenue. We did focus on elevations all the way down to the Taylor Park Bridge. So we were looking at whatever improvements that we looked at in the downtown area, what impacts are we going to have downstream, and we looked at that. Again, we're using the Army Corps model. Now, the Army Corps model, it was a more current model. They looked at updating the information that was generated in the FEMA model back in the 70s. So It did increase the precipitation data that's available. It increases land uses. It increases more detailed cross sections throughout the model. So it did provide a more accurate representation of the of what is occurring, and it also analyzes unsteady flow versus the FEMA was just steady flow analysis. The difference between steady and unsteady is basically the unsteady takes into account the attenuation that occurs with as the floodplain widens. You'll see flow reductions because some of the flow is actually filling the floodplain versus going in the river. So it is a more thorough analysis when you do it. One significant impact that to note is that the Army Corps model, the flows for the 100-year storm is approaching just over 5,500 CFS, whereas the FEMA model, based on the 1976 data, the flow is only 3,500 CFS. So based on the current information, there's a substantial increase in flow that's projected for the 100-year flood event versus what the FEMA initially did in 76. And then in the report, you can actually just an excerpt of the model with the various cross sections that we put in, and that's how we accurately represent the flow going through the downtown area through multiple cross sections. Again, we looked at the report identifies the various different options here, just kind of illustrating a cross section where we're physically removing the floodder building and just kind of opens up the channel. I'm just scrolling down, and then here's a cross section that generally identifies that this is upstream of the Essex Street, and you can see we just illustrated that we put flood walls in, and we made all the flow within that channel to try to eliminate some of the diversion that occurs. And then the fourth option I noted was looking at the other improvements, but then that was looking at improving the cross-sectional area of the Millburn Avenue Bridge. Basically looking at the current arches that are there, widening it, eliminating the center pillar, and just opening up that channel and looking at those improvements. So look, basically there's a summary table that I just want to focus on at the moment, and I guess it's kind of so we have the baseline, basically just models. It's all zero changes. But what this table illustrates is changes in flood elevations within the channel itself. So again, this is option one is just looking at the removal of the floodder building. And what we found is that if we have it for the various storm events, and I'm just going to focus on the downstream. We remove it, and what occurs downstream. And what occurs is that we have a 1 foot drop actually in the flood elevations from the benefits of removing the floodder building. But unfortunately, it really is just the low flows, the lower storms. The 10-year storm event is where we're seeing the most significant drop. We didn't see a more significant drop as we get into the larger storms, and that's primarily because the flows are so significant that even the Millburn Bridge, Avenue Bridge, is basically being inundated. And what we find is that removing the floodder building, it just eliminates one constraint, but it just you're not eliminating the bridge constraint. So the constraint in flow just transfers from the floodder building to the bridge itself, and then we start to see diminishing benefits after the Millburn Avenue Bridge. So we really didn't see much after the Millburn Avenue. Looking upstream, again, we're just seeing some minor improvements upstream of Essex Street Bridge. We did have a little anomaly here that's looking at for the 100-year, we're seeing an actual increase in elevation, and that just needs to be looked at in the model. A lot of times when you run these models, you will get some unusual, flows because we're ultimately changing the velocities and head losses that are occurring through the channel. and sometimes it just requires an additional cross-section to more accurately represent what's happening. So, if we were to refine this model further, we would go in and just do some additional quality control on that. But it's not alarming, it's just something that has to be just looked at. So when we looked at the second option, where we're looking at the removing the footer building and then just increasing the channel, initially we were expecting that we would actually see a more significant increase in decrease in flood elevations, but in fact it didn't drop as much. And looking at the model, what was occurring is that, again, the model calculates its change in velocities and changes in the head losses, and it just the impacts of the bridge ultimately was impacting the velocities in this area and how the flows were reacting. So it's when we dove into the model, it explained itself why it actually didn't see a more significant benefit from modifying that channel. And then we started to see some similar reductions and down upstream of the footer building, and then downstream again very little impacts, again because of the Millburn Avenue Bridge. That's the next constraint that's holding flow back, and that's why we were seeing it. Option 3, we added the flood walls, and we really didn't